Hi, welcome to Jadekine Gaming. My name is Adam. Today I'm going to be unboxing the Spellbook cards for the Arcane Spellbook, which is Sorcerer, Wizard, and Warlock. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now this is the version 3. And in addition to this, I also have the Martial Powers and Races deck. We'll look at that quickly afterwards as well. Now, Gale Force 9 has done these decks for a while now. The version 3 came out last year, 2017. And they've been doing them for a bit. They started in 2014, and they came out with decks, and they had like sharp corners and some other things. And so, not too long after that, I think the same year? Yeah. Also in 2014, version 2 came out, which they rounded off the corners, they fixed a few issues with the cards, but the decks were otherwise the same, and then they came out the following year, 2015, with little decks that basically, like, if a normal druid on the druid spell list had these spells. And then if you had a certain circle of being a druid, or whatever class archetype, that might give you additional spells, there was an extra little deck that came out with spells for that. So you needed 2. That was version 2 of the Spellbook cards. Well, last year they came out with version 3. So for the Arcane, not only is it the, the basic spells that you get on your spell list, but any other spells that you might get, let's say as a Warlock gets certain spells for having a certain patron that aren't normally on any of the Arcane spells, well, those would also be in here because technically as one of the Arcane classes you can have those spells. That kind of thing, that kind of modification is what was made. And that's the only one to my knowledge, but let's take a look at the cards. I think the box art also got changed with it. But yeah. And if ever you're curious, version 3 is listed above the barcode. So you know what you have. And the Arcane Spellbook is huge. Huge. Wow. Right? Okay. Let's get each of these started. I can't even properly hold that. I mean, let's split this. Okay. And of course, the backs have the symbols for those 3 classes and the spell level. The first thing I'm seeing here is apparently specifically for Warlock. We're given some blank ones. Which may just be because Warlock gets extra spells and they're like, alright, make your own if you need to. But obviously those, well, they're labeled as level 0. But they're not necessarily cantrips, so I'm not really sure. Anyways, then we get to the cantrips. And they are still very plasticky material that kind of sticks together. And so you're going to end up with all the cantrips for those 3 different classes. And it's got the name, its type of cantrip, evocation, casting time, range, components, duration, what the spell does, and if it does more at higher levels, it'll tell you that. Additionally, if it is a concentration spell, it'll have a little C right there to let you know that. If it has material components, it'll let you know in there. Let's see. When we get to higher level ones, there'll be additional details that I have to point out. Yeah, because this is basically a deck for 3 different classes, and they do it for 3 different classes because there's a lot of overlap between those classes. Oh, no. This was not a mistake. Here are the ones at level 1. I feel like this pattern is going to continue. It's like it wasn't a coincidence that they were level 0. That was deliberate. Armor of Agathis, wonderful spell. Terrible. I have a player that loves it though, and yeah, definitely sticking together the cards here. Yeah, definitely a nice thick laminated material. The nice rounded corners now. And many of them just say Arcane, but you'll see a number of them that say Arcane/Warlock, which I believe is based on the idea that those are coming from that additional deck. You know, when they had been original, or separate originally. Anyways, continuing through more piles of cards. More second level. Let's see what we got here. Do we get... Okay, does not look like there were any between there. Were there between first and second? Did we get more blank ones? No. Okay. So it looks like it's just that cantrip in first level. And I almost wonder if that is something like those are the levels where one of the features says, you know, pick a spell of your choice. Because I know some classes do that. You know, from any class's spell list. In which case, they would just have to put in all the spells, as opposed to that. So that may be what was going on with that. Carrying on into higher levels. And obviously, I'm not really trying to show all the spells, but you do see how many. Here's one of the things I told you. At higher levels, there would be another thing to point out. If a spell's description takes more space than fits on the card, it gives you a start to it, or a basic version, and then it tells you what page it is, in this case in the player's handbook, in order to find it for further reference. Yeah, all of the ones. Oh yeah, here we go. For example, some of the extra ones, you know, a lot of them have said Arcane/Warlock. Raised Dead says Arcane/Wizard. I'm sure there's a Arcane Sorcerer. Just some, you know, many of them just say Arcane, but some of them do specify there. Because they can have more information if needed. And yeah, I just, you know, for example, at a certain point, you know, we're at 7th level spells. Just the back of each one is the same, other than the number. And a small number, of course, of 9th level spells that you'd have access to. So it is a huge pile of cards. Huge number. But, I mean, it's 3 classes, and I am so glad to have it, because ultimately, at this point, I'm pretty sure I have now finished off. I have all of the Spellbook decks. This is the one that's taken me the longest to actually get. And I'm so glad to have it now, because it means I now have access to all the spells in card form. And it's useful for players. And I have a player that actually just bought a couple decks himself, because he was asking, you know, hey, well, I just have access to those since you have them, and I kind of had to tell him, like, no, because in my current game, I just introduced a spellcaster, and it is so nice. I was able to, before the game, you know, I looked up the stats for, okay, here's what I'm going to use, but I didn't want to use their spells. I just looked at the spell levels and the class, and I was like, I went through a deck and I picked out my own spells. And then I have given it, I have the cards just referenced. So here's the spells that caster has. And as an individual in the past would often choose to have spellcasters not cast spells because it's too much work to reference each page where the spells are, I now can just freely let them. I have each of the spells handy, and I kind of almost as we're in role playing situations, at least like the early level, like the cantrips or first levels that they have a few to cast. I almost just sort of shuffle through, like, do I see an opportunity to use one of these? And I just sort of wait for it and it's so much fun to make it that easy to just, as a dungeon master, when I'm trying to keep track of so much else, keep track of spells really easy. That's been so helpful. So I have all the spells. But there's more. The spellbook cards for martial powers and races. I'm just going to read them back. It's 61 durable laminated cards, including 16 Battlemaster maneuvers. So that's the maneuvers for the fighter Battlemaster, which is another thing that's always really hard to keep track of. Well, they put them on cards. 3 totem barbarian abilities, 19 monk techniques, and all the spell-like racial options for Player's Handbook going up through, I think it would be Vol's Guide to Monsters, Asimar Drow, Firbolg, Forest Gnome, Ganassi, High Elf, so including, different things that have come out up through that point. So, let's take a look at this. Obviously a much smaller deck. And oh, that was so happy. Because I see this symbol here, and on the back I see that symbol there. So I was like, well, maybe that's the symbol for this deck. It's not. They're not all the same, and that makes me so happy. This will basically give me that same ease of use for the spells to, for example, race features. So cool. That laminated feature, which just kind of... Okay, so we have... And I'm with each of these, I'm going to have to turn them now. So we have, and basically, at this point at least, functioning as a spell. So Asimar... Oh no! And their symbol. Ganassi. Alright, we get Barbarians. Get basically these spell-like features. Drow. Get a number. Oh, very cool looking. Earth Ganassi. Firbolg. Get a couple spells or spell-like abilities. That's funny looking. He's got a little bird on him. We got the Fire Ganassi. So yeah, the fact that they have art for each one. Forest Gnome. The High Elf, who gets to choose a cantrip of their own, so they just have a blank one, because the High Elf gets to choose a cantrip. So, interesting. Alright, so Fighter. So here are those martial powers for Fighter. And so you'll see... I'll pull that one. Pull one slash stuff on it. The casting time... All the spell stuff is different on this. It has the name, it's a maneuver, it has what attack type it is, the die effect, and then what it actually does. So some of these are weapon attacks, some of these are bonus actions, melee weapons, and then, yeah, temporary hit points, plus to damage roll, plus to damage. So yeah, those are fighter things. Then a monk, which I believe I technically have. But they have, shadow, 4 elements, open hand, with various basically spell-like features, we have all those included here, and then the astral projection for just monk. So we have the monk features there, and we're back to races on the other side of the alphabet. Tiefling have their options, and so they have their art. The Tritons, which I think Wall of Water was one that they got before it was anywhere else. Okay, interesting. Look for a Triton there. Water Ganassi. Yep. Nice, nice. And the Yuan Tai get their spell-like abilities. They got a big snake on the back. So the Martial Powers and Races deck, on the other hand, is basically your monk, your battlemaster, fighter, and then all of the races, and the fact that they have that different art. Oh, and the barbarian. Technically, there's a few for barbarian. And the fact they have that different art for each of the races was actually something that I thought was really cool. Because, I mean, they could have just, even if they just did, like, here is an art for this is a racial feature, they could have gotten away with that. But they chose to do art for each one, and that's very cool. But yeah, so that will, again, that's not even necessarily spells. Those are spell-like features and things, but it's still very nice to have to just help. If I'm playing a character of a certain race, I can have the spells for that, the spell-like abilities, so that it's just easy reference. Actually, with the NPC in question, I had a Tiefling who had Hellish Rebuke, and I put a little bookmark in the player's handbook for that page, so I could still reference it. But when I was sitting there role-playing the character, I didn't use Hellish Rebuke because it wasn't just something that was coming to mind because it wasn't in the cards in my hand. But the other spells that the Tiefling had, they came to mind, and she would frequently try and utilize those. So I think they're designed as player aids, but as a dungeon master, they are so useful. So as a dungeon master, I love them. But yeah, so that was the Arcane deck, which is huge, and then the Martial Powers and Races, which is basically the rest of the stuff for what they have in whatever being this version 3. It actually has races going quite a bit forward into quite a few of the books. So I'll of course link down below where you can find some of these Spellbook cards online, as long as they aren't currently sold out, which keeps happening. Which is why there was a point where I'd gotten many of the Spellbooks from before, and Arcane took so long because it sold out, and then they made this new version, which was a little more expensive because it had more cards in it, and then before I got around to picking that up, it sold out, and it just recently was back in stock, and I was like, right now, I'm getting it. Because I've missed it so many times. So I'm glad to have it. It fills a huge gap in the spell selection. So very happy for that. I'll link where you can find it below. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.